Right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Scrutiny Committee meeting here at South Ribble Civic Centre, Leyland, Lancashire, northwest of England. That's for our international viewers on YouTube across Europe. Okay, so I wish everybody a happy new year, and I'd like to introduce myself. Yeah, I'm Councillor Ange Turner, Chair of the Scrutiny Committee. We have committee members here in the Civic Centre along with the necessary officer support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and will be available on the council website. Some housekeeping for those in the Civic Centre. There are no fire drills planned, and if the alarm does go off, please leave by the emergency exits at the back of the room and congregate on the car park. Please turn mobile phones off and switch your microphones off when not speaking. For those joining us via Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. We will now move on to the agenda. Thank you. Apologies for absence, please.
Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Mal Donoghue, Councillor Matt Trafford and Councillor Colin Poulton.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded to declare any interests they may have. Any members have interests, please? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I declare a personal interest, please, in respect of item 6? I'm from about April onwards, I've been a member of the Leyland Town Deal Board, representing one of the parish councils. But I've been advised that I can still take part in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Any other declarations of interest? No. So I will move on to item 3. The committee is asked to approve the minutes for myself to sign. Can we approve those minutes as a record? Fair record. Right, thank you. Item 4, matters arising from previous Scrutiny Committee meetings. The committee, sorry, I'll hand over now to Darren, the officer. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the information presented with the agenda, members might like to remove minute 67.2 from the 11th of October, minute 67.6 from the 11th of October, minute 80.3 from 24th of November and 80.4 from the 24th of November also, and that the other recommendations remain on until they are completed and the comments are made by the appropriate Cabinet member. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. No further comments. Okay. So we're going to skip item 5. That has been withdrawn from the agenda, and we will go on to item 6, the Leyland Town Deal update. I'm delighted to welcome Councillor Mick Titherington to the meeting tonight, and the lead director, Rachel Slater. Welcome. And I will now hand over to you to introduce this item. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair, and good evening and a happy New Year to everybody on the committee. I'm going to be very brief with my introduction because we have an expert here sitting next to me who I am sure will be able to answer all the questions that the committee has got as put. I understand that the committee has asked for certain information and there has been other requests made, and I think what we've attempted to do is to put into the report and answer or inform the committee on those issues that they have inquired about. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Rachel.
So just picking up on the probably just giving a little bit of background with regards to the scheme. So a town investment plan was submitted in October 2020 for funding of just a little under £25 million. The town investment plan was approved in March 2021, and we were requested to submit full business cases to the town deal setting out the schemes that we were putting forward. There was a period of review and fine-tuning of the proposals, and it did cause some changes to how the projects are broken down. So you see at paragraph 10, the original intention was to bring it through as 3 projects. It's now being brought through as 2 projects because it really complements the different schemes that we're bringing forward. The main focuses with regards to the Town Deal scheme is the urban regeneration, looking at driving investment within Leyland, and also the connectivity to sustainable transport links. So the scheme itself and the design really focuses on creating a real heart of Leyland, so creating a market square that can be a space for businesses to invest, but also somewhere to attract a nighttime economy, but also to hold events similar to what are being held in Leyland now, but allowing that space for those events to be held. So just moving on to the specific items that we've looked at, the governance of the board. So the Leyland Town Deal Board was set up when the town investment plan was being developed, with voluntary sectors and people from the private sector and the public sector as well. So the Town Deal Board is an advisory board only. It's not a decision-making board, but they do provide some strategic direction on specific elements of the Town Deal scheme. The Town Deal Board terms and reference are included on the website, a link which I've provided here. All the members of the board have signed up to the terms of reference and have confirmed any conflicts of interest associated with this. And we regularly monitor the attendees to the board to make sure that they're attending and that they're participating within the meetings that we hold. The meetings are generally around quarterly. We will hold them more regularly if needed. Certainly during the time when we were agreeing the overall final design and the business plan, we met a little more regularly than the quarterly meetings. In terms of risk and financial management, so the project manager is responsible for ensuring that risks are identified and how those risks are addressed. So all risks are inputted into the Grace management system and then monitored on a regular basis to look at how we mitigate against those risks. Included in Appendix 1 is the current risk register that we're working to at the moment. At this stage within the project, you'll find that there's some quite serious risk in terms of the red in terms of the RAG status, but as we work through the design process, we'll look to eliminate out those risks and mitigate against them. We are very clear to the whole team who are working on the scheme, the Town Deal Board, the design team and the professional services that we're bringing, that they're all to feed into the risk register to make sure we capture all the risks associated with the scheme. In terms of the financial management, we have an independent cost consultant appointed for the scheme who provides cost advice. So they've provided the cost plan that formed the business cases, and that's continually monitored as the design progresses and we firm up costs associated with the delivery of the construction. Within that cost, there's a design development allowance, a construction risk allowance, and a general risk allowance for inflation, etc. They provide a monthly cost report to us, which is tracked against the budget, which was approved at full council in March. And then just moving on to the programme. So a full detail programme has been developed using Microsoft Project. I haven't included it in here. I've just picked out the key points at the moment. And it is being refined as we work through the design process now. So we're looking at where the critical paths are, looking at how we can phase the works to make sure we minimise the disruption as much as possible within Leyland Town Centre. And that's an ongoing process as we work through the design. From paragraph 25 onwards, you can see kind of the key dates with the different elements of the scheme included in there. And then just moving on to the final element that we've picked out regarding the scheme, and that's stakeholder engagement. So we have a stakeholder engagement plan. I've just picked out some key elements associated with that. So a matrix in terms of who we engage with as stakeholders, and how we are engaging with people with regards to Town Deal. We've already held 2 successful consultation sessions, one in November 21 and a second one in May 22, which had a really good turnout, and the feedback from those who visited the stakeholder engagement sessions has been considered and, where appropriate, incorporated into the design. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. I'm going to start with the first question. I would just like to pick you up on something you've just said, actually. So you said on the consultation, the last one was May 22. You've had feedback from residents and that's been incorporated into the design. So that worries me a bit, because if we've already got the budget allocated and we've already provided a business case of what the project deliverables are, surely you can't then post that, have consultations with the members of the public. I mean, if this is incorporating new work, then that can't be acceptable, surely, because surely the design is frozen.
Yeah, the purpose of the consultation that we did in May was really an update from the one that we completed in November. So it was to take on board the comments that had been put forward by during that consultation, and the design had been refined to incorporate those comments. There are still discrete elements within the design that we will be able to look at within the existing budget, but certainly from a budget point of view, it's frozen, and that's why I kind of caveat it by the fact that where applicable or where possible, we will consider the views of the residents, but we won't be able to consider everything that is fed back to us.
Okay, right, okay, fair enough. Right, so the first question, sorry, is we've previously heard about issues with the government committing funding to the Leyland deal to allow the project or projects to progress. Has that now been confirmed, and how effective is the relationship between the government and the board?
Yeah, everything's been resolved in regard to the queries that were made by government. So I noted in the report that we went through a period of scrutiny. So we did have a visit last year in, I think it was June, from the independent representatives of the government, and they scrutinised the project management systems, the designs, our proposals, and the feedback that we actually got back was very complimentary with regards to the scheme. So in terms of our relationship with the government, there's no problems with that. We've got communication from them that they've approved the scheme and that they're happy to bring the scheme forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walton.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Nick. Good evening, Rachel. Sorry, my questions was really for Charles Hadcock, because it concerns about the membership of the board and how representative it is of the relevant stakeholders, and how do they make sure that the board has the necessary skills and experience to ensure that you can, make the advisory what you want. So
yeah. I think in terms of the board members, like I mentioned earlier, we've got a mix of public, private and voluntary sectors. So in terms of the skills mix, we have a number of construction contractors on there who can advise in terms of the construction element. We have representatives from the LET, from the job centre, which allows us to for them to feed in terms of the skills side of things that we're trying to enhance within the town deal as well, especially with the bays building, the skills and enterprise hub that we're looking to bring in. And we've also got kind of long-term representatives from the board on the board as well, in terms of those who are main established businesses within Leyland. So a representative from Berries and a representative from Leyland Trucks, who really understand Leyland and what Leyland needs going forward.
Councillor Felborn.
Sorry, I've got a supplementary for you. I think you've partly explained this, but it's for the RIAB stages, stage 2 you've identified in section 10, that you're going to bring the two items together. And there wasn't a lot of detail in that initially in the paperwork. So is this part of value engineering? My question is this part of value engineering, or would it be better to have both projects running consistently? Consecutively together? Because it looks like one will become the daughter of the other in the project management world, and will one get lost in the other? That's what that will be. As I put my project management head on, I wouldn't want one to get lost in the other world, because I know what project management is. It's a long list of lines, and it's looks like a long list of code. So I just wouldn't want it to get lost.
Yeah, in terms of the way that the projects have been split out, it's distinct from how we will deliver the actual physical development against the business cases that we put forward to town deal. So the business case, the projects within the business cases have been split to provide those strategic links in terms of the benefits and the outputs that we can deliver from them. So, for example, the town centre transformation will feed into the public realm works and the market square, etc. And also looks at kind of the residential element as well, and the more retail, whereas the base building is more around the skills and the enterprise hub. So the two were kind of kept apart in terms of their strategic outputs that they can give to Leyland. So in terms of actually delivering the physical development, it won't necessarily be a project A and a project B, because what we've looked to do is phase out the work. One, to make sure we minimise disruption as much as possible within the town centre, but also to allow us to offer as many opportunities as possible to the local businesses. So by making the project smaller, we can use smaller, more local contractors to deliver the works by putting them in multiple packages. There's more opportunities there for the local contractors as well. And also considering the feedback that we've had back from the market traders in terms of when we programme their works, that's also being considered in the phasing as well.
Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. If I can just take you back to the membership of the board.
Mm-hmm.
So who actually determines the membership of that board? And you said you look at issues like non-attendance of members, and how do we actually deal with that? I know certainly since I've been on the board, I know my immediate predecessor, as far as I'm aware, never attended. And there's several members who are nominally members of that board who don't seem to attend. So how do we address that moving forward? Whilst there are clearly many members around the table who are committed, so you tend to feed them at every meeting.
Yeah, completely get your point. In that they shouldn't be in an advantageous position in terms of the knowledge on the project if they're not contributing to the board. What we did previously was, when we issued the terms, if people didn't sign the terms, then their place on the board was terminated, and that was. The update of the terms was towards the back end of last year. What we'll do now is monitor the next few meetings in terms of attendance, and if people don't attend, then the town deal chair will write to those representatives and ask them to engage within the next meeting. And if they don't engage, then obviously there'll be some correspondence to say that their place on the board is not there anymore.
Councillor Buttery. Question 4.
There you go. Thank you very much, Chair. Would you mind expanding on the role of the board and the council with regards to the Leyland Town deal and how decisions are made?
Okay. The decisions with regards to anything on the town deal doesn't differ from the council constitution. So any decisions are made by South Ribble Council. The board is purely just an advisory board, so they can't make any key decisions associated with the scheme. So they may advise with regards to construction techniques, maybe if it was, you know, one of the board members associated with the construction element. They may assist with the relocation of the market and the temporary location of the market traders, because some of them, the board members are involved in setting up temporary units at places like the Manchester Christmas Market. So that's the kind of discussions that we'll have with the board, and also they may feed into how we phase the development works.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walton, question 5.
Thank you. How has the Leyland and Farrington Community Hub been effectively engaged in the Leyland Town deal, and how do you envisage that they will be engaged in the future development of the deal?
So when we undertook the stakeholder engagement sessions, we split out the sessions based on the engagement groups that are set out in the report, and the Leyland and Farrington Hub were engaged as a separate entity. So we had a separate session with them and listened to their feedback associated with the scheme. We do have members of the Leyland and Farrington Hub on our board as well, so they're involved in that advisory capacity within the board.
So do you think this is going to continue, or do you think there'll be more involvement by the members of the hub?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as we move through the different stages, the design's set now. We wouldn't look to change the design because we need to move that forward. But as we move into the construction phases, we will have more of a social value element that will be delivered by the contractor, and we can look to engage with Leyland and Farrington Hub in terms of how we deliver that social value to get the most out of it for Leyland and the surrounding areas. So we will continue to engage with them, but with slightly different themes in terms of how we feed back into the community whilst we're undertaking the construction.
Now, Councillor Sharples.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well, as chair of the Leyland and Farrington Hub, I did invite the late Bill Evans, who was on the board, to come and talk to us, and he did so monthly. He gave us an update monthly, and at those meetings we did have the opportunity to give him information, to feedback, whatever impact. So we're not doing that at the moment, but perhaps we could ask Jane to do something similar on as it develops. Just worth noting that.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Hello. I'd just like to ask, what has the response been from local residents been to the proposals, and how is the board going to engage effectively with them in the future?
So generally the feedback's been very positive. There's a number of emotive issues that you get with all development that is a key concern for people, generally around parking. But the balance we're trying to get with this is to improve sustainable transport and improving those sustainable transport links so that the parking becomes less of an issue within Leyland. But generally we had positive feedback, and the main majority of the residents are welcome of the change within Leyland and the investment and what it's going to bring to Leyland. Again, the engagement that we'll have with them will be similar probably to the Leyland and Farrington hub, we can arrange drop-in sessions, which we will work with a contractor to do that, so that we can engage with them, associate with the different phases of the development. We also look to set up an emailer. So if residents want to give us their email address, we send out regular updates through an email. The Town Deal website will be updated regularly. And where those are impacted directly, we would look at sending some direct correspondence out to them.
That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. So this is effectively, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, not just for Leyland, but beyond that across South Ribble. So how do we ensure that the benefits are felt not primarily obviously by Leyland as a centre, but that those benefits spill out to the wider Leyland area, to Farrington and beyond, right across South Ribble, so that we ensure that we see the long-term benefits for the good of the local economy and for the benefit of local residents?
I think it's really important that the offering that comes from the development that we're bringing into Leyland considers all the different demographics within South Ribble. So, for example, the Business Skills and Enterprise Hub will provide a base for education and learning, not just for those who are in their college years or school years, but also for adult education as well, and will allow us to break down the barriers in terms of that stigma of having to go to a college where you're surrounded by 17-year-olds, that you've got this this hub that you can go into, and also bringing that younger demographic into the town centre as well. You know, we've got Runshaw College, and they tend to kind of stay on the outskirts. You know, they might go as far as Tesco, but by having more of a lively presence within the town centre, we can bring the younger demographic in as well. And also the nighttime economy offering is something that will bring people in. So come into Leyland, have something to drink, have something to eat, you know, meet with friends, and choose to come to Leyland rather than going to some of the other cities like Preston or some of the other bigger local towns.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Felborn, can you just speak up a bit as well, Councillor, because last time...
I will, Chair.
Thank you.
My question for you is on risk. I've actually got two questions for you. Risk register. There looks to be a number of red risks on the risk register. This is typical of a project such as this. And how confident can we be that the risks are being effectively managed?
Yeah, so as I noted earlier, at this stage within the scheme, in terms of we're still progressing and finalising the design, there are a number of red risks on there that we know that we need to address, and we will mitigate those through the design process. The risk register is regularly reviewed, so we will have a fortnightly, monthly update of the risk register where the whole design team comes together and we go through every single individual item to make sure that we don't lose sight of where those risks sit and what actions we need to take to mitigate against those risks.
And my supplementary for you on that one, just to put you on the spot. At the moment, what is the most serious risk that will have an impact on the critical path?
That's a good question. Yeah, inflation's an issue. You know, we've obviously made allowances for risk in terms of inflation and design costs and things, but the construction market has been really volatile over the last few years, and as I'm sure everybody's heard. So that's probably one of the biggest risks in terms of the delivery of the scheme. In terms of the critical path, yes, there's many different elements I could think of. I think ground conditions is probably one that is a risk, because we know that it's an industrial area. We know that the ground's going to be heavily contaminated, especially within the Eden site, and utilities as well. We experience challenges with the utilities on many different projects, so it's important that we get the people on board who can speak their language, to make sure that we don't get any delays associated with that.
You don't need to talk to me about utilities. That's what I deal with every day. So yeah, I understand about ground conditions, and I know it sounds an old adage, but the old World War II bomb thing, I know it sounds silly to talk about it, but it's a very common factor in construction. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. If I can just ask a supplementary about the risks first of all. So can I take you to page 134? And that risk about not obtaining access rights and permissions. So the inherent risk score was seen as very low. It was 3, and now it's very high at 12. Could you explain why that has moved significantly in the wrong direction, please?
I suspect that's an error in the system, because I would expect that that to be reduced rather than to increase if we're putting measures in to mitigate the risk. So I will have a look at that. This is an export from the software system, so I would have to go back into the system just to see the specific numbers to check where that's gone wrong.
Yeah, thank you. If you could get back to us on that one, please.
Okay.
Chairman, if I can then ask the next question. So if I can take you to Appendix 2, please, on page 137. And there's a balance for contingency of risk of 3.34 million. Is that part of the £38 million budget, or is that a separate pot in addition to that?
It's part of the budget.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Rachel, for the report. Can I just ask you about, I'm going back to the risk register. I don't want to go through each one, but the one that stands out for me is partly because I don't really understand it, is the one about the carbon strategy. And it says it can be achieved through sequestration, which I don't know what that is. And self-generation. I wondered if you could just explain.
Sorry, which page?
Sorry. Page 131, sorry,
131.
The carbon strategy, the second one down.
Yeah, okay. So there's different ways in which you can seek to be carbon neutral. One of the things that we were looking at the time was a district heating system. So that's the self-generation. So you almost become your own energy company, which allows you to provide that carbon neutral, carbon zero. Unfortunately, we don't have the space within Leyland to do that, and also the risk around having to develop an energy company was too great in terms of the programme in which we have to deliver this. So that was just a question from one of our design teams in terms of whether we'd considered that or not. But what we are doing is looking at the fabric of the buildings to make sure that obviously well insulated, ensuring that we're using new technologies like air source heat pumps and not going down the route of using gas, etc., which is something we've delivered on a number of schemes at Chorley now and has been successful.
Councillor Thelborn.
How are you looking at actually making all these technologies work together? Because I know there is a difficulty of making that ground source heat pumps and solar and all this type actually run together.
Okay, I'd probably have to get to a little bit more detail from our M&E contractor, but in terms of the infrastructure, we can install the PV panels and the air source heat pumps to connect through to the metering system and the boiler systems within each of the buildings. So the technology does allow us to do it. I don't profess to be an expert on it, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily use ground source heat pumps. That takes a lot of below ground boreholes. So, for example, we looked at it on Jubilee Gardens, and we'd have to put something like 999 boreholes in to be able to generate the power that we needed to. No.
Right, okay. So I've got a question, Rachel. It's really referring to the page 137. You've got like a contract status report there, one pager. So I went on the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy website today, and I looked up the indices that are available there on the construction material price indices, and it's quite shocking to see the indices jump from 2020, which is my understanding from reading this report, was when a bid, I'm assuming that when the bid went in October 2020, that was the value on there was obviously generated at 2020, okay, the budget. So if you look at the construction material price indices from 2020 to 21, it went up. I mean, this is obviously a government table and it's an average. And I've not looked at the labour one, so I've just looked at the material one, talking about a 16% increase. And then from 21 to 22, although they haven't run the PPI through for the last couple of months of 22 yet, they're waiting for that data. But if you look at the months of January 22 to August 22, and you compare those monthly figures to 21, the basically it's kind of gone up again by another 16%. So you're looking at the construction material indices in the last 2 years, according to the indices, you're looking at over a 30% increase.
Yeah.
So the way I've looked at it is, if you've presented a bid for the funding in October 2020, I'm assuming that budget that you asked for is at a fixed price and not economic conditions, then it's potentially significantly short of funding, which against the business case for the proposed deliverables, which means if I on the face of it, if you look at page 137 and you look at the key project risk and mitigation, the one down, increasing construction costs exceeding budget, I would have thought that should be a red now. In fact, if anything, it's probably better to put it a red at the start, because I guess you've got 3 years to deliver all of this, have you?
Yeah.
Is that when the Gantt chart shows the last deliverable of work?
Yeah, and we've got until the end of March 2026, yeah.
So based on the analysis that I did today, the budget that we've got of 38 million is miles out. It's nowhere near going to be enough to deliver this project as a whole.
Okay.
I don't know what your view is on that.
So,
and I don't understand why it's amber. I would have thought that should be red.
Okay, so the cost that were put forward in October 2020 was the scheme was going to be delivered to 24 for just under 25 million. The next phase of the design that we undertook to develop the business case is when we realised that the actual cost of the scheme will be 38 million. Within that 38 million, the cost consultant will use the building cost index calculator and will assign a percentage against inflation risk and construction risk and design risk. So incorporated within that budget, we have allowed for inflationary risk associated with the scheme. Now, the indices are only they're only issued quarterly normally. So it is estimated to the best of our knowledge. But as I mentioned earlier, the market is so volatile at the moment. The indices are changing quite heavily, but that is something that our cost consultant, when they undertake their cost report, they will look at that every month to make sure that it's still reflective of where we are within the market. You'll see in the dashboard on page 137 that the current forecast is already a little bit over the budget. So we have had to use some of our risk contingency to make allowance for that. And that will possibly be some design development, but also the fact that the indices have changed on risk of inflation.
Well, can I just come back then? The cost consultant, he'd have put indices in for the 3 years, would he?
Yeah,
On the best information he had at.
Yeah, so you take it to construction midpoint, which is what they use, and the building cost indices that we look at will give you a inflation figure for, say, March 2025, and that figure will be used to calculate the inflation risk.
If the inflation or the cost assessment, I mean, obviously we've got this budget of 38 million. I'm assuming that's a fixed budget. But if you suddenly find that in 2 years' time, halfway through the programme, you actually want to find another 3 or 4 million on top of that, how will that be managed by the project team? What will they? How will they manage that shortfall in budget if that happens?
So we would look at value engineering the scheme. There may be opportunities to look at the value of the scheme. I think it's a question that's being asked by all the different town deal funds, and at the moment we haven't had any clarity associated with that, because obviously everybody who's delivering town deal schemes are in the same position. But I'd like to think that our risk contingency is healthy enough that we could deal with any of those challenges that we're presented with.
Right, okay. If you don't mind, I would like to give you feedback on that slide. I do think the 3 figures that are put there are confusing.
Okay.
And I'm not so sure whether the risk and balance figure is actually needed. I think the most 2 important things for me anyway, personally, is the budget we've got and what the current forecast is in terms of the overspend. I think we're all confused as to where that 3.3 million was.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe it's something you want to...
Yeah, I'll have a look.
Or put a total column in there so that people can understand the figures. Okay, so hopefully the project management team are geared up to manage any significant budget shortfall. I mean, you might even have to you might have to de-scope the end deliverables, maybe. Okay. Right. So next is Councillor Green. Question 9. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Right, okay. Question 10, Councillor Sharples. Why don't you help me out then? It's me. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Question again about page 137, the Appendix 2. This time it's to do with the executive summary. The 3rd bullet point down, which reads, the social value for the demolition has been re-evaluated to allow appointment of a contractor to progress these works. Now, my question is, how has social value been incorporated into the project, and why was re-evaluation needed here?
Social value follows the social value policy that we have in place. So we use the TOMS calculators to calculate the social value outputs. The contractor that was the preferred bidder or the highest scoring bidder didn't submit any social value outputs. And it was found that it was likely that there was a technical difficulty with the social value portal that didn't allow them to submit their bid, their social value bid. So we thought it was better, and to ensure that we do get some social value from demolition contractors, that we asked them all to resubmit their social value outputs, and then we re-evaluated them on the basis that they'd all submitted. Okay.
Right, okay, sorry. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you. I've just got a question on actually the risk register. I understand the roles of you and Tony Hutchinson and Portia Taylor, because we've met them a lot, but could you explain the roles in the risk register, or their roles in the project, of Neil Curry, Steve Hunt, James Potter and Dan Gosling, please, because I don't know who they are.
Yeah, okay. So there are external professional team. Dan Gosling is the cost consultant. Neil Curry is our civil and structural engineer. Stephen Hunt is our mechanical and electrical engineer, and James Potter is the architect. So the purpose of the risk register is to make sure that all risk isn't sat with just one person, and that we distribute it accordingly.
Okay, thank you. So I've got another question, actually. Take page 125. At the bottom there, paragraph 25, it says programme overview for the element of the project is provided below. These dates are subject to change as each scheme is progressed. The key date is that all elements of the scheme are delivered by the 31st of March 2026. What makes that a key date? Is there some sort of condition or obligation that you've got to fulfil on that? Can you let us know what that is?
That's the condition of the funding. So really, it's defrayment of all funding by the end of March 2026. So we consider that to be full completion of the scheme. Okay,
so is that a condition from the government?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
And what happens? Is there a contingency if the programme slips? Do they take the money back, or what's the impact?
There isn't really any clarity with regards to clawback at the moment, but normally there's with other funding, government funding schemes that we've worked on, there's a change request process. So there may be mitigating circumstances, and they would approve a change request.
Right. Do we have any further questions on the town deal? No? Is that okay? Do we have any? Thanks for the support. Do we have any questions from members who are not on the committee? Nope. Any members of the public? Nope. Could you please the recommendations, Darren? Thank you.
Chair, just before you make the recommendations, I wonder if I could just say a few words. But first of all, I mean, I want to thank Rachel for coming along and the professional way that she's asked some really detailed questions. And I don't sort of want to delve into that, but I would just want to pick up on something that Councillor Green said, in that it is a once in a generation opportunity here. And I know, because I sat with Councillor Mary Green devising a master plan for Leyland back in 2006-07, which, I mean, just dissipated and faded away and all that, but the sort of the desire and the longing for a regeneration in Leyland remained. So I mean, I know that there are major issues. I mean, with a project like this, there is always going to be massive risks. But I would say that those risks for the goal and what we're likely to achieve is worth taking, because I mean, whilst it would be developing a centre for Leyland, as Rachel explained, I mean, and as one of the questions were made, is that there is going to be benefit for the surrounding areas in terms of sort of being able to develop businesses and all that. And if it becomes a centre where people want to come into, then it's going to help South Ribble as a whole. So, I mean, yeah, I understand the committee asking some really detailed questions about the risks, but I mean, just to bear that in mind is that it is a once in a generation opportunity, and it was just one that we had to seize, and well, let's hope that, well, I'm sure we all hope that it will come to fruition and the people of Leyland and South Ribble will benefit from it.
Thank you for those further comments, Mick. Right, could I have the recommendations, please, Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Some draft recommendations the committee might like to consider following the discussion are: the committee thanks the Deputy Leader and Strategic Lead for attending and answering questions. The committee welcomes the reassurance that government funding is now in place and the town deal is progressing well. The committee is grateful for the commitment to continue to engage with the Leyland and Farrington Hub, including the Hub representative regularly feeding back. The committee asks that further information be provided on the risk of not obtaining access rights and permissions score and the mitigations in place. The committee asks that the risks concerning increasing construction costs and inflationary pressures be reviewed, and the committee suggests that the format of the dashboard include a total budget box to better explain the current financial position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Darren. Is the committee happy with those recommendations? Right, thank you. Right, so we'll thank you, Rachel. I don't know if you're on for this next one. No. Okay, thanks very much for. I think she's had enough. Well, we're just doing our job as you're doing yours. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Now, we will now move on to item 7, select move allocations policy. And I'm delighted to welcome once again Mick Titherington, and also the Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, and also welcome Jennifer Mullen, the Director of Communities, with her colleague Suzanne, in support. And I would now like to ask you please to present the item. Thank you.
You, Chair. I just would like to say a few words about the background to this report, because, I mean, we are in a very challenging position in relation to housing and homelessness, and indeed, I think it's been reported before, is that we've now got a caseload bigger than we've ever had or ever experienced, and waiting lists are increasing, as well as the number of cases that are presenting. So, I mean, what is before you this evening is the select move allocation policy, and we do have a statutory obligation to have one of these, and it does need to be reviewed consistently. This is what we're presenting tonight. I mean, we are considering it going out for consultation, and I think it is the type of report that we would value the contribution that Scrutiny can put forward, because I think it's one of those that you will never ever be able to resolve every eventuality. You'll never be able to cover any eventuality, but it is something that we are required to do. I don't think it's going to please everybody. I don't think that we could get universal agreement on it, but I think it is. What we have got to do is have some fairness and equity in terms of who and how we allocate the housing. So, I mean, within the report, the major changes in the review have been identified, and I'm sure the committee has had a look at them. I mean, it may be that, you know, we'll answer questions and have a discussion here this evening, but it may be that the committee would want further time to have a look at it. But I mean, we do value. I mean, I said when I've seen this, I mean, it's going to cabinet. I thought it was an appropriate thing for it to come before scrutiny, and certainly welcome any contribution that the committee has to make.
Thank you, Mick. Oh, okay, right, I'll move to the questions and I'll ask the first one. Please, could you talk us through the reasons and rationale for reviewing the policy and making the changes?
Well, there is a statutory obligation to continue to review the policy. I think it is appropriate that from time to time you have a look at the experiences. What are the difficulties? What are people saying about it? Where are the issues that arise? I mean, and it is right and proper that you continually review to see if the policy that you have in existence is fit for purpose. So, I mean, I make no apologies for, well, and the steering committee, I mean, make no apologies for bringing that forward.
Councillor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Has there been any modelling of the numbers affected by the proposed changes?
In what way?
Have you looked into any possible people that could be affected by these changes and the way that it will be done in the future?
Well, I would see that's obviously rolling. I mean, but we're getting close to about, you know, 2,000 people who will be who will be presenting on the select move allocations. I think we've got about what, 1,200 or something more. But yeah, it is. I mean, we do have an idea that it is between at the moment. I mean, but it's a rolling figure that will change all the time. I mean, and I would just say, if you look at it, if you look at the changes, there is an emphasis on the prevention. So where people are getting into some sort of difficulties with you know, the payments because of the cost of living increases and all that. I mean, there is there is early intervention there to try and address that, so that they don't present themselves as homeless.
Okay, is that all right, Matt? Okay, Councillor Walton. Question 3. Councillor Green. Apologies, Karen.
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor Turvington, Jennifer and Suzanne, nice to see you all. Reference is made on page 16, paragraph 11, to the current local connection being less effective than it is in neighbouring local authorities. Could you expand on how this is less effective for residents in South Ribble, please?
Hi, thank you. So the current local connection policy is for people to have lived in the borough for 6 of the last 12 months or have relatives for 3 of the last 5 years. The proposal is to change that, to have a local connection to South Ribble for 2 years, and to also strengthen the family connections as well, so that people who are actually living in South Ribble and have the connection to South Ribble are the people who are prioritised on the waiting list and qualify to go onto the housing register. I think particularly with the numbers going up, the waiting list has increased significantly. and some of our neighbouring councils have much more strict local connection policies, and so this new allocations policy is seeking to address that.
Yeah, thank you for that. So by implication, and the policy in other neighbouring authorities or other authorities that we've looked at, it currently is more effective. Do we feel that ours will become more effective as a result of implementing this?
I think their local connection criteria are stronger than ours. So there'll be, because of the local connection criteria will be strengthened, it'll be prioritised for people who actually live in South Ribble. So hopefully the people who will get priority will be South Ribble residents, whereas in other local areas they've had that stronger connection for a number of years. So this is just strengthening our policy to enable people from South Ribble to be prioritised.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Buttery. Question 4.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, Jennifer. Hi, Suzanne. Page 18, paragraph 17, the word reasonable is used here. And what is the definition of reasonable and who decides on this?
Well, I'll answer that because anybody who's been involved in anything in terms of sort of the law or indeed anything will internally groan when somebody reads what is reasonable. And there is no definitive answer. I mean, there'll be a number of lawyers who've made a fortune out of trying to establish what is reasonable. I'm not being frivolous in any way in that, but I mean, I think you would have to look at it, and there would be a right of appeal. I think the thing is that what they're seeking to get at there is that if people are refusing for unreasonable reasons, it does delay the time that you can offer that to somebody else. So I mean, where at the moment you can refuse 3. I mean, that does add an enormous amount of time to it. So I mean, the proposal is to reduce that to 2. And the safeguards would have to be there, and it would have to be reasonable. I mean, and if the individual feels that they're not reasonable offers that have been made, they would have the right to appeal that. But yeah, I mean, it is there. But I mean, I think it is. Well, personally, I mean, it is a move that needs to be made because the turnover and people waiting for properties is such as that you can't really afford too much of a delay. And as I say, it is unreasonable is the key word, really.
Can I just come back on that, Chair? Do we know why these figures have gone up so much in South Ribble? Is there a reason? Is there more people moving into the area for council properties, or what?
Well, I think that the reason why it's going up is, to put it bluntly, is that not enough houses. There's just not enough houses to fulfil the demand, and that and that's the problem. It's not like there's a sort of an influx of people all coming in here. It's a question of us being able to sort of house, the people that we've got.
So in a situation where you have, say, four people living in a house, and then 3 of them move out, so you've only got maybe 2 of them moving out, and the parents are left, or the mother's left on her own. Is there no way you can sort that out, where you can move them into a smaller property and then give the bigger property to a family?
I think within there is a sort of an encouragement, but I mean, at the same time, you're talking about a lot of different situations. If somebody has lived there all their lives, brought up the family, the family's left. I mean, you've got the bedroom tax and that there, but I mean, I don't think we would ever get to the stage where you're sort of evicting people because they're in properties. But I mean, I think there is a ongoing attempt to try and sort of, fit properties to the families that are there. I mean, I think if you look at the homelessness figures and us trying to accommodate, when you're talking about accommodating families, big families, into accommodation, it is the most difficult, really.
To mention, Progress Housing have been working with some of their tenants to try and encourage them to look at downsizing, and they've been able to. They've done funding, so they've been able to fund people's moving costs. They've given people grants for furniture. So there's quite a lot of incentives out there. They don't want, they can't evict people because the house is too big for them. But they do try to incentivise and write to people who they know are in a larger house that they don't need one. And obviously we work with Progress quite a lot because they're our main housing association, but they will help and fund some of the costs of moving.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Just on touching on Councillor Titherington's point, I think the main issue here is capacity, isn't it? And that we haven't got it. And there is no quick fix for this, unfortunately. But what I'd like to ask is, what is the council's policy on this in terms of what can we do as a local authority to try and support the residents who, that ever-growing list in terms of who are wanting and needing house for those that are in dire need of it. I understand there's no quick fix, but surely we should have a 5-10 year policy on how we might be able to improve that.
Well, I mean, I think as far as the administration is concerned, I mean, we are building council houses for the first time. You might say, well, that's just a drop in the ocean, but it is a start, and it's setting out a policy and a desire. And I mean, I don't know how long we can do that, but I do have to say, and I do have to sort of pay tribute to our officers and staff, because many of the people who do present, who require, properties, do have a number of different and complex needs, and it does take some sort of real professionalism, energy, and effort to sort of make sure that we can accommodate them. I think beyond that is for us to try and ensure, as far as possible, that we do get social housing building when developers come before us. I mean, to try and sort of extend the and to work with registered social landlords for them to acquire properties to meet the demand. I think in the very short term, as I said, I mean, we're building council houses. In the medium term, we've got to work with developers and housing association, and in the longer term, we've got to have a proper planning housing plan that will meet the needs of the population going forward.
Okay, you're right with that, Will. Okay, Councillor Walton, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Nick. Good evening, Jennifer. Good evening, Suzanne. My question is on page 19, paragraph 23. Could you talk us through the consultation programme and how you are going to make sure that this complex policy is effectively communicated and consulted upon?
I suppose this is the start of the consultation. I think beyond that, we will be taking it out to the various groups, charities, others. I mean, individuals, people who've accessed it and who are accessing it. I think we will just endeavour to give it the widest possible consultation and involve the widest possible people. And indeed, if there's any sort of recommendations that, you know, the scrutiny can make in terms of where we should go and what we should do with it, we'd welcome that. But I mean, I think the intention is that, and Suzanne might be able to sort of, you know, help us on that, is to give it, you know, from here, we will be going out and consulting with various bodies and individuals. Suzanne?
Yeah, so I'm part of the Select Move steering group. So the steering group will put together a consultation plan, which will involve, as Councillor Titherington said, the customers that are currently accessing Select Move. It will be on the website and the council's website. We do have a number of like multi-agency forums that we can consult with. Obviously, the members of South Ribble. So really as wide an audience as possible. And in the other districts as well, in Chorley and Preston, there'll be wide consultation there as a whole partnership.
Can I come back on that, please? Yeah, and would it be good that we could, as scrutiny, know the results of the consultation as well? Because I think that's important for us to follow up this and to make sure that, you know, it's not just on the website, because not everybody, as we know, has access to a website and everything. And just another question is, will the review and proposed changes be considered at Preston City Council and Chorley Borough Council? Is theirs the same policy as this? And so it will be considered by their councils just as well. And they will be reviewing it in the same way as we are, and consultation.
Yes, they will. I mean, because they're part of the Select Move. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Councillor Thelbourne.
Good evening, everybody. You talk quite a lot about the armed forces. Just a very quick question. I think this is most probably a yes or no question for you. Does this align with the Armed Forces Covenant, and are you going to work with the Armed Forces Hub?
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions? There doesn't appear to be. Right. Questions from members not on the committee? Nope. No members of the public here. Could I please ask you now, Darren, to summarise the recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes and discussions that the committee might like to consider as recommendations. So the committee thanks the Deputy Leader, Director and Team Leader for attending and answering questions. The committee is grateful to the Deputy Leader for consulting the committee on the draft policy prior to consideration at Cabinet. The committee welcomes and supports the draft policy to go out for consultation. The committee asks that the consultation reach out to those who don't have internet access, and the committee looks forward to the results of the consultation being made available to members. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I'd just like to thank Jennifer and Suzanne for supporting us tonight and answering our questions, and Councillor Titherington for the informative information. It's been really helpful. Thank you. Now going to move on to item 8, scrutiny matters, and I'll first of all take item 8A, which is Lancashire County Council Health Scrutiny Committee updates. We have our delegate representative here, Councillor Jackson. If you could please give us a brief overview of the council's representation on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As representative of this council and this committee, I've been asked to give a summary of the reports given to Health and Adult Services at LCC on the 14th of December 2022. It began with Dr. David Levi, Chief Medical Director of ICB of the Integrated Care Boards, and Catherine Wright, Transformation Programme Manager, and they were welcome to the meeting to provide details to the committee on the virtual wards programme. Virtual wards are an efficient, safe alternative to NHS admissions, aided by technology, they say. Patients are able to receive the care monitoring and treatment in their own home, preventing avoidable admissions to hospital. Virtual wards concept came as an outcome from COVID, where a number of patients were supported in the community, and initial focus would be on respiratory and fragility. However, it is being looked at to support end-of-life care, patients suffering from heart disease and children with eating disorders. The ambition of 746 beds across Lancashire and South Cumbria by September 2023 set up on acute trust footprints who have responsibility and would sit within the existing NHS systems. There was then an invited question and answer session, and these further points were established. There was a need to understand who could benefit most from the use of virtual wards, as this service would not be of benefit for all patients due to their health condition or home environment. Confirmation that the Acute Trust has clinical responsibility and accountability as they would if the patient was in hospital. Daily contact would follow with the patient and family, with further support if the patient's health changed. Suggestion was made that more work will be undertaken to see how families could be supported through the NHS and social care with any cost of living expenses to enable the option of care in a virtual ward. Recruitment is being undertaken with utilisation of existing hospital staff and community teams to the virtual ward programme, progressing to the integrated neighbourhood teams to further provide outreach services. Assurance to the committee was given that work had been undertaken to impact modelling for those patients requiring further support through social care that they would normally receive in hospital. It was envisaged that there would be minimal impact on social care, they say. However, further work would be required on domiciliary care. And this has been highlighted to the national team to provide a response. There was confirmation that there is an assessment protocol in place to identify eligibility to virtual care. Assessment included reviewing home environment as well as support networks for the patient. There was a report from the Health Scrutiny Steering Group, and members received a report from the HSSG, which included a report on DNA CPR. This is, to those who aren't familiar, do not attempt cardiopulmonary resuscitation orders for the people with learning difficulties or autism and the Lancashire health check, with autism. They also talked about the Lancashire Health Check programme. Further information will be provided to the committee, reference LEDER programme, the Learning for Lives and Deaths, people with learning disabilities and autism. Confirmation that further details on the NHS Health Check programme across Lancashire will be given to all councillors. And for more details, you may look on the LCC website for any additional details as necessary. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Jackson, for that. Does anybody have any questions or any contributions to that? No. Okay, thank you. Right. I'll now move on to item 8B, which is meetings and trainings courses attended by Scrutiny Committee. Members are invited to report back on any training they may have attended. Do we have any reports back on any training? No. Okay, next item. Item 8D, Scrutiny Committee Forward Plan. Members are invited to review the Scrutiny Forward Plan. And do we have any comments or statements that anybody would like to bring? Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. It's just with regard to the item that we deferred this evening regarding the community safety partnership, and just to seek confirmation that we'll be considering that at the next meeting of this committee.
Right, thank you for that comment, Councillor Green. Is there anything else? No. Right, sorry, apologies, guys. I've stepped forward one. So I missed out 8C, which is Cabinet Forward Plan. Members are invited to review the Cabinet Forward Plan and flag anything they might be interested in considering. Do we have any feedback, please, from the committee members? No. Okay. So, scrutiny review of the impact of housing development. Councillor Michael Green may wish to update on the review. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, just briefly, if I may, can I first of all thank my colleagues on that task group, Councillor Unsworth, Councillor Walton and Councillor Jackson, who's left. We've had a number of meetings, but just to touch on the last couple, we had a meeting with the council's planning enforcement office, I think just before Christmas, which was really helpful. We received a couple of case studies from councils in York and Cornwall. And we recently had a meeting with a couple of officers from the county council, specifically looking at the impact upon highways, infrastructure, networks, etc., adoption of roads and issues such as that, and also looking at provision of school places as a result of these housing developments. So a lot of work is going on. I would, as I say, thank my colleagues and thank Darren and Coral for their incredible support to that task group. We hope to be able to conclude that in a not too distant future, bearing in mind that with a couple of meetings left, we'll be bringing this back to the full scrutiny committee for further comments and questions at that stage. And if there's anything in the meantime that I can assist with, happy to do so.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green, for that review. Very interesting, very useful, and it sounds like a lot of people have done a lot of work on that, the members. Is there any other further questions or points anybody would like to bring up? No, I think therefore I will end this meeting, our first meeting of the year. I think it's been very useful, very successful. We've done a really good job, and we've got that scrutiny at the right level, I think. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
John.